These deep flavors of sweet and salty caramel crisp around the edge of the pork belly just make the perfect Japanese chashu. It is Wok Wednesday. Welcome back. I'm Jeremy here from School of Wok in Covent Garden, London. I'm going to show you how to make this. It all starts with your pork belly or your belly pork, whichever way you want to call it. You choose. But I'm going to sear this pork, and there's lots of different ways of cooking a Japanese style chashu. Sometimes you have the sort of more poached version that sort of sits on top of a ramen. This one here is probably closer to the Chinese style chashu, which usually is roasted. But the key to this one is I'm going to braise it and cook it not dissimilar to a sort of slow braised red fermented tofu pork in Chinese tradition. And to do that, you want to sear it well before you add anything else. It's quite nice to have the fat or the skin cut off that pork belly. And then I quite like also these sort of strips of pork so that when it has finished cooking, which takes about an hour and a half or so, you can get nice slices out of it, and each slice has a good bit of flavour around the outside of that edge. I'm going to get the sauce to caramelise really well around the outside of this pork, so you want to get that flavour in. Next up, your ginger and spring onion. And because this is slow braised and this is all going to kind of melt into the sauce anyway, you can be quite rough and ready with this. You can see the awesome colour on the edge of this pork. I quite like to get it really well seared before I then braise it, because then you get a beautiful sort of darker finish to that sort of caramelised edge. Whilst that's still searing, got plenty of time to get everything ready for the rest of the flavour of the dish. So we're going to start with a Japanese light soy sauce. And one of the big differences between Japanese light soy and Chinese light soy is that Japanese light soy has no sort of added caramel or anything like that. It's just that sort of natural fermentation. And it, for that reason, has a sort of slightly more sort of balanced, savoury base to it. Not that you can't use Chinese light soy sauce for this type of dish, but it just depends on what you're cooking. Some sake, which is essentially like a non-sweet version of mirin. It's a Japanese rice wine. And then I've got some dry sherry here as well, because I want to bring out that sort of deep, sweet, salty, savoury flavour in this pork. And it works a treat. To work with that savoury, some oyster sauce, not too much, and then some brown sugar to bring out or accentuate that sweetness. And that brown sugar, more importantly, will help to really caramelise around the edge of this pork. Oh, I know this is guaranteed to taste incredible. My ginger and spring onion can just go scattered round the edges of my wok. And note this is a thick-based cast iron wok, because I'm slow cooking this. So I want to make sure that that heat is retained for the whole time. Make sure all that ginger gets into the base oil and the sort of any fat that's kind of dripped off the pork belly. You want to give that a couple of minutes for the ginger and spring onion to really flavour the oil before I pour the sauce in. Now, a big thing when you're braising anything is it's not just boiling. Before you pour your sauce into your pan or your wok or anything sort of thick base like this, you want to make sure that that heat is whacked up to a high heat. And the idea of this is that as soon as this sort of sugary, salty sauce pours into the wok, it bubbles up straight away. Get all that sugar into there as well. Try not to leave anything in that bowl. You can see the amazing sort of heat that's coming off that wok. And instantly, I smell the sake and that sherry sort of mixed together with the sugar. You can see that starting to caramelize straight away. You want to let this sort of caramelize for about 3 to 4 minutes before you then top it with some chicken stock or water. Once you top it with the water, you're looking to cover all that meat. So once we're at this quite syrupy texture in the sauce, that's when you want to top it up with your chicken stock. So once you've topped that with that extra liquid, your stock or water, you want to bring it to a boil again. And this is where it's really important to sort of note, when you're braising something like this and getting that caramelized, or you want a caramelized finish later on, say an hour and a half, 2 hours later, you need to get the sauce initially to that syrupy texture first, then, and let it sort of wrap around the meat, and then put your liquid in, let it boil and simmer on a low heat. So I'm going to turn that down to low heat now, and now we're in the slow cooking process. Later on, if I want to reduce the sauce again to a point where it's nice and syrupy and really sticking around all that pork belly and the fat, that's what makes a good braise. Let it cook for about an hour and a half. So this has been cooking for over a couple of hours actually now. And look at the sauce of that. It's already starting to reduce nicely. And the meat itself is really lovely and tender. So for the last 5 to 10 minutes, if you want to reduce your sauce even more and get it glazing as much as possible, you want to whack the heat up, get that to a vigorous boil, and then just let that go. Once you've had that last sort of caramelization, you can take the bits of meat out, just so they have a few minutes to rest before you slice into it. And this is the type of thing that you could slice into sort of pretty much straight away whilst it's still hot. Or sometimes if you are doing it for ramen or to top a ramen, you might want to let it sort of cool and then chill in the fridge overnight, and then you can get really nice thin slices out of it. However you want to use it, it's up to you. But you can see now the texture of this sauce has just created that natural like silkiness to it from that slow cook and that sugar and everything else that you've started this dish off with. So after 5 minutes or so of resting, it's good to slice into, and you can see how lovely and soft and succulent this meat is from that braise. My homemade Japanese chashu. Ooh, super savoury. It's definitely not as sweet as a Chinese chashu. It's got that really deep flavour to it. Loads of recipes like this on the rest of the channel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ding, hit that notification bell. We'll see you soon.